allesammans! Today speaking about patron gods in the Norse belief system. Very popular question I see on all these kinds of online forums and groups. How do I choose my patron god? How do I know if my patron god is trying to contact me? How do I use my patron god for my practice? And I don't know where you guys got all this load of shit. Now, I know I don't have to say this to my regular subscribers. You all know this. I'm so happy and I love all of you. You really are knowledgeable and have great questions, and I even learn some things from you all the time. So this video is not for you. This video is for the endless supply of beginners who are unfortunately just being misled by the crap that they see on Facebook groups. And I really don't know where this idea of a patron god or goddess comes from. Does it come from Wicca or Christian like patron saints? I have no idea. If anybody knows how this snuck it or slithered its way into the Norse belief system, please tell with me, because I have no idea. But this idea of a patron god is nowhere in the Norse sources. So I'm going to go over some of the sources now. I'm not talking about invocations or prayer or Baldur or Godis. That's something different. Yes, we have those. I'm talking about patron god specifically, the act of coming into a certain belief system and choosing a single god that you decided you're going to have a relationship with for whatever reason. I don't know. There's nothing like that in the Norse sources, but like I said, in this video, I'm going over a few of the sources to kind of show you a similar concept that existed in the Norse and Germanic regions, so you can get the right idea and stop the spread of all this misinformation that I don't know where it's coming from. The main point that you're going to see is maybe there were a select few, and I mean very, very, very few individuals in the Viking Age who over a long period of time, a lifetime, focused the most of their worship on a specific god or goddess, a specific deity. But these are religious leaders, godis, priestesses, people who have an incredibly deep spiritual understanding of our religion, and they spent their whole lives learning how to do these things and reaching different states of consciousness and invoking these types of energies that we call the gods or deities. Okay, so you don't just come into a new religion and brand new and say, "Hey, Thor, come over here. I want to talk to you. Hey, Thor." "Hey, Loki, come here. I want help getting my ex back. Come help me." This is not what it's about. So you'll see what I mean in just a minute. But first, we have two records only of a specific person being devoted to a single god. Two records ever. First one comes in Gisla Saga. Here, the priest Ravnkell Freyrsgodi was dedicated to Freyr. He was a rich and powerful priest in Iceland, and he was loved by his community, and he dedicated his worship specifically to Freyr. We don't know exactly how he gained this kind of spiritual awakening and calling to Freyr, but what the saga does say is that Ravnkell had a horse dedicated to Freyr, and that nobody was allowed to ride this horse or else Ravnkell would kill them. This is a good example, by the way, of how one might kind of dedicate oneself or one's, energy towards a specific deity in the Norse sources. But yeah, reserving specific animals. Odin, it would be a raven or horse. Thor, goats. Freya, cats, and so on. So that just kind of gives you an idea. But again, that source does not say much else about the actual worship or practice. Next source is Gisla Saga. Here, a priest called Thorgrim Freyrsgodi. He was another devout worshipper of Freyr. Not much is said about that, except that he was great at magic and also blacksmithing, so weapon forging mostly in that saga. And the god Freyr loved him so much that after Thorgrim died and was buried in a mound, snow or ice never fell on that mound because Freyr would not want any frost in between them at all. That's what the saga said, according to legend. So you kind of see there, these two priests, Godis, they were a very rare outlying case of someone who spent a lifetime dedicating themselves to the worship of Freyr in this case. They spent a lifetime focusing on this spiritual awakening, meditation, offerings, altered states of consciousness, things like that, that they can realize exactly what Freyr was, and they did not expect anything in return. Very different than people today, by the way, coming into a religion and praying and begging right away that God comes and talks to you and helps you with your job interview or helps you lose some weight or something like that. I've seen some crazy things online, but this is not what it is. Next source. These are the only 2 people that have ever been named, the ones that I just went over, but we have a couple more that are not mentioned by name. In Adam of Bremen's account at the Temple of Uppsala, we see here that gods have, there were statues of Thor, Odin, and Freyr, and each of them had a priest appointed to them who was responsible for offering up the sacrifices. Notice here that the priests were appointed by the whole country. Once a year, the whole country of Sweden and probably other places came into this temple at Uppsala, and it was one single person responsible for making the sacrifices to that specific god. This is for very good reason. It's because these individuals were the most spiritually awakened and enlightened in that area, and they had full understanding of what their specific dedicated deity represents and truly means. Most people, me included, in the modern day, us in the modern day, we're a bunch of dumbasses who don't even truly understand what the gods really are, what these types of energies are, and how to connect with them. Same thing in the Viking Age. Most people had regular jobs, busy schedules. It was really only the priests who, after a lifetime of things like meditation, spiritual discoveries, it was them who had the knowledge to dedicate themselves to a specific god, and they were so few that only 3 of them in the whole country of Sweden, and these only ones who actually had the permission to do so by law, actually. So they were the ones in charge, elected to kind of be the connector between the gods. So one person, 3 people out of many, many thousands. On top of that, even these highly spiritually awakened individuals were only experienced enough to dedicate themselves to one god, just one. You can't really pick and choose these things. You can see, why it makes some of us a bit upset when a brand new person comes into paganism, comes onto a Facebook group and says, hi, Loki is their patron god, and they have contact with them every day. It's really quite disrespectful, according to the tradition that has actually been historically accurate. Anyway, on to the next source. This one is very old, Germania by Tacitus in Roman times, writing about the Germanic tribes living in Germany, Netherlands, Denmark area about 700 years before the Viking Age. And these people primarily worshipped Nerthus. We are not sure who Nerthus is 100%, but we're pretty sure it's the Norse god Njord, Freya and Freyr's father. And even here, you can see all these tribes, thousands of people, many thousands of people in this area, and only one priest had the right to go on to this specific island. And you can see here the priest perceives the presence of the goddess and holiest of holies, deepest reverence. Same thing I've been saying the whole time. It was the same way in the Viking Age. Thousands of years, this was the custom to have one dedicated priest who was kind of the deepest person that really understood how to connect with this divine energy that we call gods or deity. We have a couple other small examples in the sources of priestesses, kind of as a collective that had a patron god through a contrast. In Landnámabók, which is a book that had to do with the settlement of Iceland, priestesses, or Gidia as they were called, had to devote themselves to the Vanir gods specifically. And I believe that was even a law in Iceland that was written. They had to do this. They had to, if they were priestesses, they had to devote themselves to the Vanir. So instead of the Asir. So, Freyr, Freya, Njord, those deities. So not dedicating themselves to a specific god, but a group of gods that were associated with fertility. Why was this a law? We don't know, but that's just the way it was. Another Roman historian, Plutarch, he wrote about a battle that the Romans had with the Germanic tribes. Again, this is about 700 years before the Viking Age, and how the German tribes lost to the Romans here, and the women were to be captured as slaves. by the Romans, and the women asked if they could instead be appointed to serve at the temple of Apollo, but they were denied this and ended up killing themselves instead. So Apollo's Norse equivalent is Baldur, but I think Uller is more likely, but it's for sure one of those two. Yeah, not much else there. So there are a couple more sources like this, but you kind of get the point. I'll give one more bonus tip. In ancient Greece, there were priestesses, there were oracles at the temple of Apollo at Delphi that dedicated their life to this deity Apollo. So possibly Greece, things might have been a bit different, but the Norse and Germanic sources, these are about all the sources we have that explain anything similar to what a patron god might be. A relationship with a specific deity like that. The rest of the time, we have stories about prayer and magic and sacrifices and things like that to a specific deity. I'm actually writing a book about that. That'll hopefully be done later this year. But that was something else. That was something to be used as you pleased. Whatever you are trying to accomplish with your practice or magic or whatever, you're free to use whatever deity you feel would work best for that specific situation. And please don't forget all these other spiritual entities that can be used as well, that are much easier. I would watch my series about blues, and that would make things a lot more easier to understand certain entities which were to be called upon in certain situations according to the historical sources. So don't need to focus on one specific god. If you do, if perhaps you want to take the steps to become a priest, Godi or Gidia, you could, but even then it was a very small number of priests who would go on that journey, and truly it would take a lifetime to fully understand the energies that we call the gods, what they really are. Even me, I spent a good chunk of my life researching, meditating, lucid dreaming. The only entities that I can say that I have experienced quite clearly, Norns and the elves, maybe Odin in smaller levels, but that's me. Again, I've spent a lifetime. But of course, you can do it if you like. I will make some more videos about the types of steps you would like to take if you would really like to spend a lifetime maybe becoming a Godi dedicated to a specific deity like that. But again, patron gods, do not focus on that. I don't know where this came from. You don't have to come into a religion and pick a specific god to worship. That's just a bunch of crap, as I have seen here. But that's all I'll say for today. Vi ses nästa gång.